Go ahead, sir.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Conte. Thank you, everybody, for being here again this Sunday. Dr. Conte, we're going to talk about two issues. First, we're going to talk about the 2022 budget with regards to the National Assembly and civil service pay raises. Uh, we will scrutinize that budget a little bit, and then we will talk about the cabinet retreat, the lessons we could learn from that. So, two issues: the 2022 budget regarding the National Assembly and civil service pay raises, and then the next topic will be lessons we could learn from the cabinet retreat. Without wasting much time, Dr. Conte, we're going to go right ahead and look at the 2022 national budget and how the recent pay raises for National Assembly members and the upcoming pay raises for civil service that kicks in July next month, how those two factors are going to impact the 2022 budget. Dr. Conte, we know that the National Assembly increased their pay recently by several factors. And this has created a lot of controversy in the country. There are supporters of this, and there are also staunch opponents of this. I tend to be on the side of caution. I do agree, Dr. Conte, that the National Assembly members are relatively less paid compared to their counterparts in the sub-region. There has been a lot of reference to Ghana, and which may be true, but I want to believe that looking at the Gambia's current economic situation, it is not, and if I may use the words of CDA Data, who recently commented on this on the Standard newspaper, is that the raise is unjustifiable. That is my position on this. And if you look at the numbers, it will tell you, I think there is enough evidence in the numbers to support the argument that it is unjustifiable. The National Assembly, we have a spreadsheet of this, Dr. Conte, that we probably can pull up and have our audience take a look at. The national, yeah, you can share the spreadsheet, Doctor, and I'm gonna go through it line by line and see what we have here. So,
need to minimize that. You go ahead. You go ahead.
So, what we have, what recently is actually called the clothing allowance for the National Assembly. You may call it a wardrobe allowance or clothing allowance, whatever it is, but that's the first item on this list. And I have it, the clothing allowance, if you look at it, is $100,000 per National Assembly member. And since we have 58 National Assembly members, 53 elected, 5 nominated, so we have 58. If you multiply that by 100,000, we have 580, actually 5,800,000 for the 58 members. And then they also have what is called a Constituency Development Fund, which for 53 members, this excludes nominated members because those do not have any constituency. So the 53 members will get $31,320,000. No, that's the basic salary. So the constituency allowance pegs at $15,500,000 for the 53 National Assembly members. And then basic salaries their basic salary, we have 40. They said their salary will be increased to 45,000. And if you compute this for 58 National Assembly members for 12 months, we are actually looking at 31,320,000 just for their salaries. And we have also their per diems. And for the 58 National Assembly members, and I just assume that they will travel only for 7 days in a year. So this number is on the low side, frankly, because I'm sure it's going to be much more than that. So for each of them, traveling only 7 days in a year, their per diem is going to be 8,932,000. And so there are some assumptions I made in this, and I tried to explain those on the side. So you can help yourself by looking at the breakdown of these. They also have a vehicle subsidy. So the vehicle subsidy here is that goes. They're going to get a vehicle at a loan. They'll be given a loan to buy a vehicle, but they're only going to pay 50% of that loan. So the half of the loan will be paid by the National Assembly from the National Assembly coffers, and they will only pay 50% of it. So if you compute that, the vehicle loan for the 58 members at half price is gonna be, that's a lot of money here. So that's gonna be almost like 29 billion. So that's a lot of money. All right, and then we have their monthly sitting allowance. So again, if a monthly sitting allowance for 58 members for 12 months, that is that number here, 13,920,000. So, and then they also have a constituency or responsibility allowance. So constituency allowance is, I think, is for the elected members, and the responsibility allowance, which will cover the non-elected nominated members as well. So they call it constituency or responsibility allowance. But that's for 58 members for 12 months. That's also gonna run in the millions, 17,400,000. And plus they get rent allowance. Rent allowance for 58 members at 12 months runs at 6,960,000. And then, surprisingly, remember these people got a loan for a car, which they pay only half of. In addition to that, they also got transport allowance. So that is a little bit absurd to me. Why that's kind of double dipping? You know, they are dipping into that twice. They get a transport allowance, but then they also get a loan at half price to buy a vehicle. So I don't know, but their transport allowance also for 58 members at 12 months runs at 27,840,000. And then they got what they call the sessions allowance. I don't know what's the difference between that and the sitting allowance. But for that also they got for 58 members sitting for four like quarterly, 3 months in a year. So it's a quarterly. So I computed at a quarterly for 58 members runs into 5,800,000. And then we have the committees. I said the committees they sit for 3 months in a year. So if you compute that for 58 members, it is in the amount of 4,176,000. And then if you look at the total of all of these, well, they have a tour allowance too. Tour allowance for 58 members every 3 months quarterly. That runs at 4,464,000. And then if you do the subtotal of these, it runs at kind of 2,913,512,000. And then they have a gratuity also on top of this. A gratuity is at 12% of the subtotal, which will give you something like 7,284,620, 7,284,628,000. That is gratuity. And if you compute the total of all of these, Dr. Conte, it gives you 36,423,000. No, let me say this again. 36,423,140,000 So that's the total expenditure we're going to have on the National Assembly, Dr. Conte. 36,423,140,000. And if you compare this to this number I got from the Ministry of Finance website, they call it the National Assembly Approved 2022 Budget. So this is the amount that is approved for the National Assembly budget for 2022. It is $376,581,024. Now, if you compare these two numbers, the budget approved for the National Assembly for 2022, according to the Ministry of Finance website, if you compare it to the amount now needed by the National Assembly after increasing their pay, you compute these, you will see that the National Assembly has increased their budget by 98.97%, almost 99% increase. Dr. Conte, this is a massive, massive increase of money that needs to be dedicated to the National Assembly. Now, one would wonder, where is this money going to come from? Do we have the money? We clearly don't have the money. So, and this is on top of, Dr. Conte, next month, the civil service pay raise will also kick in. So the problem that the Gambia is going to face, obviously, is where are we going to get this money from? And currently, my understanding is that the Ministry of Finance is actually scratching their heads, trying to figure out where to make up this money. And the most likely thing they're considering is to find somewhere in the budget to cut, to cover for these increases in pay. And so what we are really going to see, there are two scenarios here. They could try to take up more loans to cover for this, which is unsustainable, and in fact will be against the advice of recent advice of World Bank that is trying to push the Gambia to minimize taking up loans and depend on mobilizing internal resources. So the likely thing the Ministry of Finance will do in the upcoming budget is to cut expenditure elsewhere. So I will not be surprised if we see some government agencies downsizing or losing money, funding, to redirect that money into covering National Assembly and civil service pay raises. So in short, we will see, Dr. Conte, downsizing of operations, government operations. But also, the other side of all this is also the fact that, Dr. Conte, as we raise pay for National Assembly and the civil service, what we are effectively doing is increasing spending. We are putting more money into the economy, which in my view is counterproductive or counterintuitive, considering the current inflation and economic crisis in the country. So I think this is a double-edged sword. Either way, the government is not going to win in this, and the Gambian people are not going to win in this. These are steps that we are taking right now that are really, really counterintuitive. So for these reasons, I am pretty much against the idea of raising National Assembly pay for National Assembly members and also raising pay for civil service. And Cydia in the Standard newspaper made an argument that this is simply because we cannot afford it. And I think Gambia truly cannot afford these raises. We don't have the money to pay for it. Our economy cannot support it. It is going to make our economic condition really worse, for that matter. So this is my position on this, Dr. Conte. I'm not sure what you have to say on this, but the floor is yours, Dr. Conte.
Thank you very much. We just have to now rely on the vice president, what he said about just be righteous, say the truth, and he doesn't care whether they fire him. And what I just don't understand is that IMF and World Bank, they always contradict themselves. A few years ago, they advised Gambia that the Gambia is a high debt distressed country for them to curtail borrowing. And now we turn around, just maybe 2 weeks ago, the World Bank approved 337 million loan to the government of the Gambia, which is about 17.5 billion. And that they will be sending this to Gambia in installment, 3 installments. So which means that it's going to take 3 years. So if you look at 17 billion, now we can say that our loan each year will be about 5.7 billion. Then just last week, another fun fact came that the IMF is giving instant credit to the Gambia of 6.7 million US dollars. Again, which is about 37 million. So my argument here, or caution, is that why did Gambia request for sudden or quick credit? That tells you that there is no money in the bank. That tells you that the Gambia is facing short-term cash flow problems. And again, we are going to base our argument on the fact that now we have someone in the executive branch by the name of Badra Diouf, who wants to speak the truth, and he doesn't care whether he gets fired. So now we have company now. That we don't have to worry about someone saying that if you argue, you are against President Barrow's development agenda. And then we turn around, just again this week, the Minister of Tourism said that they have a credit of 68 million. And the Vice President said that we have to be transparent. The Gambia government will never tell you if they get funding from the World Bank or IMF. They will never say it's a loan. So we need transparency. I know that IMF is not going to give free money to Gambia. It's on a grant. And then the World Bank's 337 million US dollars is not a grant. And the 68 million that the Ministry of Tourism just announced I can say emphatically that it is not uh, a grant. So, what I just don't understand, how can you increase salaries before even without adjusting your budget? It baffles me. I was saying that the country needs to have an interim budget period, meaning that our 2022 budget should just end June 30th, and we adopt another budget for 2022-2023 that will end June 30th, 2023. I hope the new minister will speak up. I know that we have separation of powers between the executive, legislative, and the judiciary. But I don't understand how the Speaker of the National Assembly can unilaterally approve this budget. I have yet to see whether he has the power to do that. And how about the other vehicles that was purchased for the National Assembly members in 2017? So they're going to have those vehicles and at the same time giving them a loan. I would also want to know whether if this is challenging court, particularly the loan that the speaker just announced, whether it can be sustained in court. Because I do believe that the previous loan approval to build houses for National Assembly members in Oleandum, I think it was rejected.
Right, it was.
So, which means that since we are a common law country, and if there is a precedent or a prior case, there is a possibility that if someone files suit against the National Assembly member in reference to the loan, I bet you may be able to win. But again, what I just don't understand, yes, we criticize the government, but I wrote the other day that I'm looking for people to come on so that we can file a class action suit against the National Assembly. What I don't understand, is that if you look at the National Assembly's budget of 324 to 334 million, it's even more than agriculture. So is this the time to increase salaries without increasing revenue or trying to find establish controls that in effect may help us to generate more revenue? And so now the responsibility comes to us. So these people ran for office, and when they went in, they felt that they are entitled to have clothing allowance. They are entitled to A, B, and C, and the Ijutata Kodola. But before, these folks didn't have nothing. No, this is a slap in the face. We see, we cannot sit down to criticize National Assembly members when we cannot sponsor candidates, and we should try to do that next time around. But now there are some National Assembly members that we've engaged, and we would like to see whether they're going to accept. DOI has 2 National Assembly members, and I hope DOI National Assembly members will reject. And we also believe that UDP, because they cannot criticize the Barrow administration and then turn around and enjoy the increase in their salaries, 45 million. We cannot compare the Gambia with Senegal in terms of payment when we don't have the resources to do that. We cannot do that. And what I don't understand here is that, so these folks are entitled. So what we have to do as Gambians, I think we need to be able to sponsor candidates. This one is too late, but they have 4 years and some months left. Whether it's 4 years, 10 months, 4 years, 9 months, you strategize next time again, and any of those folks, and we should be writing to them, that if you vote for this, we will sponsor a candidate against you. When the government wanted to increase salaries, I vehemently argued that you cannot increase expenditure without increasing revenue. We call it the matching principle. The revenues go with expenses. Whether you're having a rolling budget, whether you have incremental budget, you need to find ways, because what I've always looked at is that when you look at the budget of the Gambia, our project and program grants, they represent about 43%, or slightly more than 43%, but one can say 43%. So which means that we are able to only gather 57%. And then there is no transparency again to say that the budget of 2021 that was approved in December of 2020, how much of the predicted or applied or allocated program and project grant was realized or recognized by the government. You can go and look at the Ministry of Finance. They will always put down expenditure, but they cannot tell us the actual revenues earned. So if you're going to do compilation or going to compare what was predicted in terms of revenue, and they don't even do that either. So it seems like we are driving a vehicle without opening our eyes. And this is what's going to happen, because the Gambia Revenue Authority, every single time the Director General will say that they collected 4.1 billion, the same numbers, which I don't trust in a sense. So we will continue to have this. So the Gambia doesn't have the resources. If you don't have the money, if you can only take care of yourself 57%, and the 43% you have to go outside to beg. Remember, Gambia had never realized a fiscal surplus. The Gambia has always seen a fiscal deficit, and the deficit that the country has is closed by taking more loans. Because the fiscal deficit of the country, after taking out, compiling the revenues of the country, plus the program and project grant money, minus the personal emoluments and the capital expenditure and the payment of interest, not including payment on the principal, whether it is domestic or external. We've always had a fiscal deficit. And let's say, for instance, we compute that we have 3 billion in fiscal deficit. The government of the Gambia will going to borrow, they will most likely will borrow 7 billion. Because the 4 billion the extra 4 billion that they have is going to be paying what? The loans, whether it is a loan in arrears, whether it is going to be the annual or monthly payments that they have to make. The Gambia payment on national debt itself is 37%. So we have a long way to go. And I believe that I think that the Speaker of the National Assembly really made a mistake, because you cannot have money that you don't have. When we look at what is happening in our country, okay, the Gambia cannot even feed school children. So why are you going to be giving this amount of money to National Assembly members, and at the same time you're going to give them a loan, and then you're going to forgive 50% of that, and then turn around? This is what I just don't understand. If you are from the provinces and you are a National Assembly member, why can't you go back to where you won the election and beautify your place? Instead of you staying in the Combos, building a house there, and the people who voted for you, you won't have anything in common with them. But again, like I said, we are now going to be arguing, challenging this government based on what the Vice President said. Because I told folks, the Vice President is an intellectual, and I will be the last person to criticize him in public. Period. I won't do it. Because I'm saying that at least when he came in, regardless of what he did when he was the Minister of Higher Education, man, it takes a man to admit or to say something that he spoke bluntly. And that's what we need in leadership. But I am very skeptical to a point where I don't think it's going to last long, because the vice presidency is transitional in the Gambia. So again, I don't want to take too much of the time, but I think that we should join a civil class. We should file a class action lawsuit against the National Assembly when it comes to giving loans to these people. We don't have the money. And what was the prior salary of these folks? Was it not $18,000?
I think so, yeah.
So now they're going to increase the salary more than 125 to 130%. That is ridiculous, man.
Right.
When we don't have money, I will continue to be radical in my thinking. But again, I am going to criticize based on what the Vice President said, that we all have to be in line with him, because he's our last hope. Someone who can come to be a vice president of the country, says that he doesn't care even if he's fired, but he's going to speak the truth. Then we should continue speaking the truth. There is no transparency. Whenever they get funding or financing from a government, from external sources, they will never tell us whether it is grant or loans. So we are taking more debt. By the way, the Gambia's debt is over 114 billion, but they're not going to tell you that, because the figures that they have, Mambo and Jack cooked all the books. There is no reliability whatsoever on our accounts. So again, we want to try to make the Gambia the best place to live. But my God, I am very disappointed that the National Assembly member, that is our last hope, can just come in and they feel like, so they want to get paid more. But the few people that we know in the National Assembly, this is the time we should try to engage them, to lobby them, to say vote against. I even want to know who actually brought this in Parliament, in the National Assembly. This is a joke. When inflation is high, prices are expensive, Gambians cannot feed themselves. These people have the audacity to increase their salaries more than 150%. No, we cannot sit quiet. I've never seen anywhere in the world where are you going to increase expenditure, but you are not going to touch revenue, or you're not going to place controls so that at least you can have more increases in revenue. We are not talking about taxing people high. We are talking about the leakages that they have, because that's the word they use. So again, let me tell you one thing. My prediction: by October of 2022, the finance minister will be going to the National Assembly asking for supplemental. And remember, anytime we have a supplemental, it's a loan. So we are mortgaging the future of our children, grandchildren. There is no way possible whatsoever for anyone to justify this increase in salaries. In some areas, 546%. And then on top of that, to increase the salaries and increase the compensation for these National Assembly members. This is sad. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Dr. Conte. Very well said. It is true. I totally agree. I think the civil society organizations in the Gambia should consider going back to court again and file a suit to prevent the National Assembly from going ahead with these races. We're not in dispute of probably the number per se. The National Assembly probably could be paid more, but currently we don't just have the money. The Gambian economy is in a situation that it cannot sustain that. So basically, what the National Assembly is doing is milking the Gambian people, milking more money out of them that they cannot afford. So we are really against that. We don't think the increases are justified. And so the civil society organizations should stand up and go back to court and file a suit to bar the assembly from proceeding with this. Dr. Conte, you talked about agriculture briefly. My understanding is, and I was listening to Madi Sise, one of the National Assembly members, I think he is for Serekunda West, argue on one of the online radios on TV, I think it's Kerfatu, made an argument that agriculture, people are saying that the National Assembly is paying themselves this amount of money when we have a fertilizer problem in the country, farmers cannot afford for. And his argument is that the budget for agriculture was 500 million. And of these, 200 million was dedicated to fund fertilizer, and 300 million was dedicated to funding seeds for farmers. And so his argument is that people should actually blame the Ministry of Agriculture for not providing these resources to farmers, rather than blaming the National Assembly for the lack of these resources to the farmers. But what Madi failed to understand is, and I know Madi quite a little bit, not personally, but I can recall some of his responses to similar issues before, like when Barrow gave transportation vehicles to National Assembly members, and that created a lot of controversy in the country also. Madi was one of the National Assembly members who vehemently argued in support of that. And his arguments were pretty, he was like, Madi, to me, in my view, he's more like, when it comes to ethical issues of these things, he's more like, anything goes person. He has no regard for the national interest, as long as he gets his benefits and his interests out of these things. It looks to me, my understanding of him, when he responds to issues like this, is that he is more concerned about himself and his benefit than the Gambian people. But that was his argument, that the funds were given to the Ministry of Agriculture, but they are not delivering. And that is where people's complaints should be directed to, not to the National Assembly. Yes, so based on that, I can understand where they're coming from, but we still maintain that these increases are unjustifiable. And Dr. Conte, my understanding is it's going to take the Ministry of Finance, and I think what they're currently trying to do, based on my understanding, is that they're trying to cut as much as $1 billion from the upcoming budget to be able to accommodate these compensation increases for the National Assembly and the civil service. But even that, even $1 billion is not going to be enough. So they're going to cut operations seriously, to allocate for this, or they're going to continue to take more loans to cover for this. So either way, it's a catch-22 situation. Either way, it's not going to be good for the country economically. And the third aspect is that it's going to raise spending and further make it difficult to manage inflation and high prices in the country. So that much we want to say about this, Dr. Conte. Unless you have a final word, I'm going to go ahead and move on to.
Let me counter Madi, because I think he prevaricated. I don't think Madi actually looked at the budget. So let me finish sharing this with you and then show you, because there is no way the Minister of Agriculture can have a budget and then turn around and have a different item. I just want Gambians to see this. If I wish I can reach out to Pierre Fatu and say, let me counter Madi, because I don't think Madi knew what he was saying. Here is the budget of the country. And we are going to, there is no way that he can blame the Ministry of Agriculture. Let me just start all the way from the top and just tell you, this is the approved budget of the country. The president's office, the total is 677,650,000. I don't think Madi saw this, actually. And the recurrent budget expenditure is 619,150,000, and the development budget is $58,500,000. So since he talked about the Ministry of Agriculture, I wanna say that, Madi, I don't think you knew what you were doing, and don't blame the Ministry of Agriculture. The Ministry of Agriculture doesn't have the funds to carry on. And you see, my friend, the Ministry of Agriculture, the budget is 392,793,000. The development fund for the Ministry of Agriculture is 167,405,000. The recurrent budget for the Ministry of Agriculture is 225,388,000. So where is the 500 million?
There you go. We have the numbers.
I am going to write to Care Fatu and then see whether she can invite me to counter Madi, because it doesn't hold in water. Only if they report something like this in the budget and have different numbers. But what we have, and again, this is what I don't understand. So now you have a budget. So you're going to cut. Then if you're going to cut, you need to make budget amendment. And that budget amendment has to be approved by Parliament. So there has to be adjustment to this budget beginning July 1, 2022. Because it will make this one obsolete. So where are they going to cut? Because if they cut, they will not be able to provide services. Where are they going to cut? We need to streamline our revenue base. Nobody is looking at revenue at all. Everyone is looking at expenditure. You increase the expenditure, you know that you cannot sustain the salary increase of civil servants. Now you want to cut. Where are you going to cut? Are you going to cut agriculture? Are you going to cut the expenditure allocated or appropriated to the president's office? Are you going to cut that? No, I think I need to reach out to Care Fatu and see if she's available. I'll be more than happy to engage Care Fatu, because I think Madi Sise, whoever, I'm not going to name his name when I'm talking, whoever came there and gave false information that Minister of Agriculture was allocated 500 million, I say that's a flat lie.
Thank you, Dr. Conte. Absolutely, very true. This is the situation in the country. And like you rightly said, the government has to look for somewhere to make up for this shortfall in the budget. We have to find a way to accommodate the National Assembly and civil service pay raises, compensation raises. And what I strongly suspect is going to happen, Dr. Conte, and like CDM mentioned in his interview with the Standard, is that we are in a country where we don't even have ambulances for many of our hospitals. And in those hospitals that have ambulances, we can't even get fuel in those ambulances. And so as the Ministry of Finance tried to grapple with this budget deficit to accommodate National Assembly and civil service pay raises, we are going to see more shortages in these areas. We are going to have more and more hospitals without ambulances or with ambulances without fuel in them. We're going to see a lot of these interruptions in services to the people. Ministry of Agriculture will grapple with many of these shortages as well. So we're going to see more of these. Failing equipment in these ministries that cannot be repaired. We're going to see more and more cuts in services to the people. So basically, ultimately, the end result is that the Gambian people are going to suffer more in order to make our National Assembly members and civil service happier. And this defies logic. These people should be working for the people, not the other way around. Gambian people are losing everything every day just to pay these people. People, who are not even delivering to them. Their pay should be dependent on their performance. And like the VP said at the end of the retreat, and we are coming to talk about that. Performance is what matters. Any compensation for these people should be contingent on their performance. And currently, they are not performing well because, by all indicators, the Gambian economy is floundering seriously. It's not doing great at all. So these people are not doing great. They're not doing a great job, by every measurement. So this is our final word. We are not in support of pay raises at this time. There's no justification for it, in the words of CDA data. Thank you very much, Dr. Conte. We're going to go ahead and briefly talk about the cabinet retreat that just ended. I think they had it at the Kairaba conference hall, something like that. Dr. Conte, what came out of the retreat is that there were rigorous debates and discussions and stuff like that, and papers were presented and suggestions were made about how to reverse or how to deal with the current economic and lack of performance issues in the endemic in the Gambia government. But the VP, the Vice President, Ali Badara Juve, a very eloquent guy, a guy I admire greatly, said that in his closing remarks at the retreat, said the retreat will be judged and the ministers will be judged by their performance, not by the high-sounding speeches that were made. And this is quite important for them to understand, that the Gambian people will be watching. We are not going to remember the speeches. We are going to be looking for performance. And the VP also talked about down the road, in 3 to 5 months, they need to be able to come back and evaluate and see what is achieved, what is not achieved, and what to do next. But also, Dr. Conte, he talked about accountability also. And I think that should be very, very much emphasized. Evaluation alone it's not going to do anything. These people are known to fail repeatedly, and they always make excuses for their failure, and then they go return back to their office and continue the same practices. NAWEC, GAMTEL, all of them, all these ministries and parastatals, state-owned enterprises, they are known to be failing year after year. If you look at their budgets, all their money goes into operations, pretty much. How can you make profit if you are just running these SOEs just to pay yourself? All the money is spent on operations. Nothing is there to improve and make the companies better so they can deliver to the Gambian people. No. So accountability should be a very, very key factor. If any of these ministries or SOEs are not performing to expectations, their managers need to go home. They need to find another job. They need to be replaced. And this should be made very clear to them. Your ability to keep your job and keep your compensation would be contingent on performance. Benchmarks should be made. And if the managers and ministries who fail to meet their targets, if you miss, by, a few things or, those are understandable. But if you keep woefully performing, terribly, you should be sent home. We need to look for somebody who can do a better job. Frankly speaking, keeping the same people who fail continuously year after year, it's not possible. In our schools, when our children, when they fail their exam, they're sent home. They at some point they are told, you need to go find another school. We cannot keep you here because you're not performing. We need to do the same thing with our government officials. They need to go home. So I want to see that accountability part really, really emphasized. If you come back here, and we see it at PURA, PACPEC, what they call PACPEC, the National Assembly Committee that scrutinizes, that call these SOEs to come and explain their operations and their finances and their profits and stuff. Many of them come even unprepared. They come with no document. It's not available, and they keep asking for time to. We cannot allow this kind of stuff. These are continuous things. You cannot operate off the hips. You have to have documentation of what you are doing. Your finances have to be intact. You cannot just come to National Assembly. You have no document to prove anything. And then you go back and cook something and bring it back. This again goes back to the competence of our National Assembly also. But I want to emphasize at the presidential level, we need to emphasize accountability. And I hope the vice president will stand up and follow this through. The failing institutions, failing government ministries and parastatals or SOEs needs to be held accountable. If you don't meet your benchmark, you cannot keep your job. And this needs to be made understood to all of them, that their continuous holding of their offices will be contingent, from now on, will be contingent on performance. Thank you, Dr. Conte.
Okay, so I'm glad that you brought the state-owned enterprises, and I just want to again talk about, in fact, we in accounting say interim financial reports are not reliable. They are subjective because they have not been subjective to what audit. So the only reliable information that the National Assembly Select Committee on Finance can only look at will be the budgeted financial statements. I just want to show you something here, and this is sad, and I also even blame Halifa when he was in Parliament. I just want to show you something. So you notice that I pulled this for NAWEC. The Ministry of Finance only has a 2019 audited financial statements for NAWEC. They don't have any information for 2020 or 2021. So we talk about reliability and relevance in financial reporting. So how relevant is information? It wouldn't be able to predict, or it wouldn't be able to give you feedback. So now we are in 2022. You notice that we only have information on 2019 audited financial statements. And for those of some people who are in the Gambia who continue to think that NAWIC can deliver, NAWIC is not going to deliver. NAWIC has a cash flow problem. And you know that with the price of crude oil so expensive, NAWIC will continue to ration electricity in our country. Okay, look at the revenue. As of December 31, 2019, NAWIC's total revenue was 3,790 million. The cost of sales before other expenditures was 3,331 million. They had a gross profit of 459,736. But then look at the administrative cost, net effect on write-offs, depreciation charges. They didn't have any gain, release of capital gains, and then other operating income. You notice that the operating expenses was 1,621,656,000. So if you subtract that from the gross profit, you're going to have a loss. So I just want to go down here. Look at the loss for the year that NAWIC had, 1,367,104,000,000. Almost half of what NAWIC literally earned as revenue was a loss. Again, but let's look at the cash flow statements for NAWIC. You will notice that NAWIC's current assets daily, the intangibles, 7,244,000,000. The total current assets of NAWIC, 1,900,000. Total assets of NAWIC, 9,183,000,000. But I want you to look at the total liabilities that NAWIC has. Okay, 9,183,053,000. So NAWIC, literally speaking, if you look at the expenditure of NAWIC, we're looking at non-current liabilities and current liabilities. Non-current liabilities of almost 5 billion. The current liabilities of 2 billion. So NAWIC's total liabilities is more than 7 billion. So the liability of NAWIC is more than the equity. So tell me how on earth NAWIC is going to be able to deliver when NAWIC doesn't have the cash to sustain that. And look at here. In fact, this is so worrisome that they refuse to tell us the cash that the company has. But then you may be able to say, okay, I know what they're trying to do, but how about if I go to the statement of cash flows to reconcile? Here we go. You see, when it comes to operating expenses, change it in operating expenses. They had an outflow of 689 million. But let's go back to I want to look at the beginning cash of NAWIC because they have to show it. So the decrease in cash is 686 million. Look at cash on hand, cash and cash equivalent at the beginning of the period, only 72 million. And then the cash and other equivalents at the end of the year, 759 million. Right? And this one here, how the cash and the cash equivalent at the end of the year, what happened was that the increase in cash equivalents uh, relative, because they didn't show any financing activity. So do you see what's happening? Now it took loans. So that loan financing, somebody financed Nawek that actually increased their cash flow. But again, that has to be paid. So you got to pay periodic. You have to make periodic payment on principal and interest. So Nawek has a cash flow problem, and that being the case, Nawek cannot deliver. The only time that Nawek can deliver is for Nawek to reduce the total debt that it has. So based on that, we will continue to have problems. So I am very disappointed at the last National Assembly that they were never able to even have the 2020 financials audited. So calling the National Assembly, calling the state-owned enterprises to come and talk, what any information that they're going to give, if it is not audited, it's not reliable.
Right.
So I don't even understand why Parliament is doing it. My friend, I think we need to be able to reach out to some of these people and see whether we can get them. But it seems like when they're running for office, they want to talk to you. But as soon as they get there, they say F you.
Right.
Case closed.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Conte. Very well said. And I think I totally agree. A lot of these SOEs, the reason, particularly NAWEC, the reason why NAWEC cannot and is unable to even transition our energy sector from dependence on this heavy fuel to renewables and alternative energy to light up the Gambia is partly because they cannot afford to invest into development. You know, all their money is trapped into operations and other stuff that is keeping their liabilities high and running them into perennial losses year after year, and be a burden and dependent on government. And consequently, the Gambian people continue to suffer for lack of service delivery. Like you clearly stated in the analysis, this is the perennial problem of these SOEs. And currently, as NAVEC stands, I think it's totally foolish to keep this company. They should be sold off. It totally, one can argue that it needs to be privatized because there's no sense in keeping a company like this that, year after year is failing to deliver and is a heavy burden on government and the people of the country. So, it doesn't really make sense. And many of the other ones, if you look at them, SOEs, pretty much the story is the same. It's a very sad situation. I hope at some point we will look at some of these SOEs in particular and focus our light on them and try to analyze and see what is going on and maybe make some suggestions how they can get themselves out of this quagmire of losses year after year and become a valuable company for the Gambian people that can help our economy grow and improve the lives of our people in the country. Dr. Conte, I think this is it for today. I'll go ahead and say something if you need to say. Otherwise, we're just going to...
I'm fine.
All right. Again, thank you so much for being here, Dr. Conte. We want to thank our audience for being here. We want to thank all the fathers out there. I know today is Father's Day. All the good fathers, outstanding fathers, and those who are not that good but trying. Yeah, they are trying to be good. We want to thank all of them for being there for their children and their wives if they are married. It is important. Fathers' roles are important in the lives and development of the children. So let's keep it up. A lot of us have benefited from coming from very stable families. Both mom and dad contributed in equal terms in our development and our growth as human beings, as decent human beings that have learned to be self-reliant, learned to be hardworking, learned to be a value to society. So with again, to make it short, happy Father's Day to all of you. And thank you very much. We'll meet again next Sunday.
Okay, happy Father's Day to everyone, including you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Take care, sir.
Thanks. We'll see you again.
Bye-bye.